Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we have some juicy information happening all throughout this week. And dear God, is this insanity? We're going to talk about Valve and more information about something we talked about last week. We're going to talk once again about Activision Blizzard and the ongoing lawsuits and the fallout potentially with that. We're going to talk a little bit about Twitch. And then finally, we are going to talk about the massive Destiny 2 debacle that has been plaguing my timeline for the last couple of days, and hopefully we will come to a general consensus. I was hoping to see the TWAB before doing this video in hopes that there would be some clarification as to some of the points when we get to the Destiny section and the Bungie section, but unfortunately that was not the case. So we're just going to go forward, and if there is an update, I will slink it in there. So let's get started. The first thing that I would like to cover is what we talked about last week, which is Valve is now banning NFTs and blockchain gaming, and there have been a couple of articles circulating since that has been made public knowledge. So we're going to take a look at one of the news reports here. Valve bans deal blockchain gaming in a big blowout, and this is an opinion piece, and I have read through the vast majority of it, and I find it very interesting, so I will link it below if you want more information. It was an unusually proactive move for a company that typically takes an anything goes approach to what happens on the platform and then reverses course only when people point out the entirely foreseeable problems or it gets yelled at loudly enough. Obviously, they have come under fire a couple of times before. So the article continues to state the idea of virtual items having real world value has been a contentious issue for years. The US government started looking into taxation on the exchange of virtual goods in games like Second Life and World of Warcraft some 15 years ago. A German tax court recently ruled that renting virtual buildings with virtual currency was subject to actual taxes, and they do link to a specific article about that, which is right here. I will link that below if you're interested in the subject. The games industry proper has been very clear about its virtual goods having no real world value, even though it will happily sell you as many in-app purchases, bucket loads of gems as you want for $100 a pop, and even then it has found itself repeatedly under fire from critics and legislators. Given the central conceit of NFTs, it will be very difficult for developers of these blockchain games to argue they have no real world value. There's also the very real possibility of governmental regulation of various types of blockchain technology. China has already banned mining of cryptocurrencies and halted digital currency transactions, and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has promised increased regulation of crypto finance. So, it just goes to show you that this is a very big topic right now in the world of video gaming and can definitely affect where you would be able to maybe purchase some of these games or subscribe to different aspects or make money through some of these different exchanges. Further in this article, the author states, putting aside the logistical issues of incorporating unique player-owned items into each new game both visually and mechanically, the games industry has been trending towards more centralized control of games and experiences for years. We've gone from fire and forget games that could be pirated and modded at will to tightly controlled and ephemeral live services that cannot be enjoyed without an always on connection and the installation of kernel level anti cheat software. So he raises a lot of different points and different questions and cites a lot of different sources about the topic. And it goes to show that this is a much more encompassing and involved discussion that is happening between legislators. But it is certainly something that people should consider with respect to this individual topic. So I wanted to bring that to your attention that this is a big deal. And if you're looking to support blockchain gaming or NFTs or anything like that, because that is something that is up your alley, you're just going to have to look in other places as various companies are trying to figure out where they fit into the grand scheme of things. Of course, it wouldn't be gaming news if we didn't have more to discuss about Activision Blizzard. And of course, we sit here with some interesting news. More than 20 Activision Blizzard employees exited following lawsuits. Now, of course, it's no surprise that Activision Blizzard has been facing massive changes as they are dealing with two separate lawsuits at this exact moment, on top of overhauling a bunch of different aspects of their current IPs, as well as defunking certain ideas and other IPs, as well as basically ignoring the existence of some of their IPs. And here we have Fran Townsend said that more than 20 people have exited Activision Blizzard following internal investigations, which followed California's sweeping Department of Fair Housing and Employment lawsuit against the video game company. Current and former employees alleged that the World of Warcraft publisher maintains a toxic workplace culture that's hostile to women who are paid less than men and subject to sexual harassment. Townsend said more than 20 individuals have been disciplined in connection to various resolved reports in the recent months. Now, the company will be adding 19 employees to its ethics and compliance team, led by Senior Vice President Jen Brewer. Townsend also said that Activision Blizzard will triple its investment in training against harassment and other workplace concerns. And none of us really believe that this is going to be as effective as they perhaps hope, because, of course, there's other news to coincide with this particular news report, which is Activision Blizzard moves to pause California suit over ethics violation. And this is exactly what I was talking about in last week's video, where I said that if one falls, there's potential that both lawsuits could fall, and that Activision may or may not get away scot-free, or Activision Blizzard would be in a world of pain and it's gonna go down. So, here we have a little bit of news regarding that. The publisher today filed an application to stay the proceedings, as in halt the proceedings for now, in the case to allow for limited discovery into the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's allegations of ethics violation on the part of the DFEH lawyers. The EEOC last week said a pair of DFEH attorneys leading the agency had previously served at the EEOC and directed the federal agency's investigation into Activision Blizzard. Activision Blizzard filed another request to have its case designated as complex legislation and move to another court better suited to handling the complicated nature of this case, citing the EEOC and the DFEH entanglements and the publisher's own assertion that the DFEH destroyed information it was required to preserve. The DFEH accused Activision Blizzard of the same thing back in August. So they seem to be looking forward to moving to a better courtroom. And finally, they say the change of venue appears to be a rare point of agreement between the DFEH and Activision Blizzard in this case. As the publisher said, the agency has also requested the case be moved to complex court. So, we look at a little bit more detail from The Verge. So Activision Blizzard is trying to get the discrimination suit thrown out of court for good reason. Remember that we talked about the conflict of interest. So the California State Bar conflict of interest rule says a lawyer who has formerly served as a public official or employee of the government shall not otherwise represent a client in connection with a matter in which the lawyer participated personally and substantially as a public official or employee. The application basically alleges that the DFEH lawyers should be disqualified from participating in this case against Activision Blizzard, since those lawyers previously worked on a similar prior case against the company when they were employed by the EEOC. Activision Blizzard has settled for $18 million of another discrimination lawsuit that was brought forward by the EEOC. And the DFEH is trying to block that settlement because if it's settled, it means it doesn't have to go to court. It means that they don't have to provide proof. It means that no more further mudslinging can happen against the company if they settle out of court and agree to the terms. So the fact that Activision Blizzard is like, here, we're going to throw you a bunch of money is going to make things a little harder for the DFEH. So the EEOC claims that two of the DFEH attorneys who have appeared in this case and who currently play leadership roles within the DFEH previously served as EEOC reenacted, during which time they helped to direct the EEOC's investigation against Activision Blizzard. It's just very interesting how all of this is coming forward and how really difficult this is going to be in the long run. Either everything goes to hell and Activision Blizzard walks away, or they get massively implicated in manipulating absolutely every element of not only the lawsuits but also its handling of the case to begin with by using the third party union busting firm that they have sent their employees to go speak to because they're not part of Activision Blizzard and therefore there wouldn't be a conflict of interest. However, by doing so, they may have knowingly allowed their staff to provide confidential information to lawyers who now are not going to reveal any of that information during any big court cases. Therefore, it makes all of this incredibly challenging no matter what side of the table you're looking at, because there are just so many moving parts, and then there's also so many elements that are very similar between the two that moving to a different court is going to be massive. We'll have to see what ends up happening with this particular case. We'll have to see if the discrimination suit will get thrown out of court or not, and what happens with the fallout, but we are definitely not done talking about Activision Blizzard. I'm sorry if that was the ultimate plan, but it is not the case here. Next, I'd like to mention an interesting update with Twitch. Now, last week, of course, we talked about the massive leak for which there doesn't appear to be anything super brutal so far, but that doesn't mean that more can't come, because the person who leaked the information leaked it 125 gigs or 130 gigs worth of data, and then followed it up by saying there would be a part 2. Now, this has nothing to do with that, but Twitch has been working on other features that will be perhaps useful for various users on the platform. And that is that Twitch is working on a new rewind function. So Zach Busey tweeted this out on the 22nd, talking about there was going to be now like a rewind button up to about 5 minutes in the live player, and if you click on it, it pulls up the VOD for 5 minutes prior to the live video feed at that moment, and moved to the correct chat position as well. There are some concerns with this, obviously, but it's an interesting move, considering you can just click on the video and go into the current live stream video and rewind it that way without having to worry too much. And this just gives it a little bit more accessibility. It is mentioned that some people are actually going to see these new buttons, the rewind stream, remind me, and watch trailer, although I'm not exactly sure what that is. And this is them experimenting with future updates that they will be including on the platform. So I don't know if this is necessary. I mean, once again, it's a thing that could be useful for certain people, but I don't feel like it's a absolutely necessary addition. I mean, I guess some people might find use in this kind of feature, so we'll keep an eye on what happens with it as we progress forward. But again, I don't know. I don't feel like it's such a huge deal, especially since they have other things that are a little bit more pressing, but that also falls under a different department. So, yay for testing new features, and boo for not telling us jack shit about anything else. So, we'll go with that. Now, we're gonna talk about Bungie. And it bugs the crap out of me that this is where we have come. Ever since I started playing back in Forsaken, I absolutely loved the way that things were done. There were certain seasons that were questionable, but otherwise seemed really good. And by the time that Bungie got away from Activision, they have made leaps and bounds in terms of their story, in terms of keeping things interesting and light and fresh. It doesn't feel as much of a, I'm not going to say as much of a grind, but as frustrating to figure out what to do next, because you have the seasonal challenges that you can sort of pick and choose what things you're going to focus on. And if you are a casual player, it makes it a bit easier to focus on certain things. in order to get the Bright Dust, if you're looking to get the 75 seasonal challenges complete to get that boost of Bright Dust, which of course allows you access to buying a bunch of shaders and skins and sparrows and various different things, because a lot of those you would have to buy with silver, which is the real money purchasing aspect. Now, Bungie and therefore Destiny was in our Twitter feeds for the last few days because of something that was specified on Twitter. And we're going to take a look at that right now. Destiny Tracker posted that if you want to get the dungeons, you have to get the digital edition of the Witch Queen. So, when you do that, you get all 4 seasons for the next year, and you get the 2 dungeons. If you get the standard edition, you can still upgrade to the deluxe edition to get the dungeons later. So they'll also be offering a separate way to purchase the dungeons in the future, but they will not be included as part of the season pass. This caused a huge upheaval in the Destiny community. It went all over Twitter, it went all over Reddit, and it is a massive point of contention between the community base. And I have to say I don't disagree with some of the complaints or the thought processes that people have come up with. So, for example, PC Gamer yesterday said that Bungie says next year's Destiny 2 dungeons won't be included in the season pass, and some players aren't happy about it. So, Bungie has confirmed that the 2 Destiny 2 dungeons planned for release in 2022 will not be included in their respective season passes and will instead be sold separately. Traditionally, season passes have been the source of most new content released between expansions, usually in the form of new seasonal activities and exotic missions. Some players thought, as a result, that the new dungeons would follow this trend. It turns out that's not the case. So, he goes on to just quote what Cosmo said on Twitter and on the downvoted Reddit thread, and carried on to say, dungeons have never been part of a Destiny 2 season pass before, but they've also never been sold separately either. The first 2 dungeons, Shattered Throne and Pit of Heresy, arrived with the Forsaken and Shadowkeep expansions respectively. The third and most recent dungeon, Prophecy, was released during Season of Arrivals, but it was free for all players, much like this year's Vault of Glass raid. And while the next dungeon will be the main content drop in December 30th's anniversary pack, this Year 5 plan still represents a new approach. I don't know how I really feel about this situation because of the way it's being done and the way that it's being explained. So, of course, Paul Tassi wrote an article stating that the dungeon drama is more about confusion than it is about cost, which I'm kind of inclined to agree with here. He, of course, also quotes Cosmo in his article and then defines exactly what you get. So, to get this content, you have to understand the Witch Queen bundles that are currently being offered in the first place. These have been listed for 2 months now, but they're sort of key to the whole issue. The Witch Queen Standard Edition is just the expansion, which will maybe give you some of the story. It will give you maybe access to the new planet and the activities and stuff there, but I'm not sure what else that is going to include, just generally speaking. The deluxe edition is going to give you the expansion, all 4 season passes for the year, and 2 dungeons. And then the Witch Queen 30th anniversary bundle is the expansion, the season pass with all 4 seasons, 2 dungeons, the 30th anniversary gear, and an additional dungeon which launches in December. And it has its own standalone cost if you don't do the full anniversary bundle. Okay. So, Cosmo is saying that you can upgrade to the deluxe edition that includes the dungeons later, or there will be a path to buy the dungeons separately. This is additionally confusing because if the expansion is $40, this is US, and the season pass is $40, the dungeons should theoretically cost nothing. But the implication here is that if you don't act now and get the bundle and buy the full year, you'll end up paying more for them later, which I suppose technically kind of makes sense. But the fact that the option isn't available to just buy the game and buy the dungeons together without needing to buy the season pass, because one of the things they stated was we wanted to avoid FOMO. So we want to make sure that if you're going through a season, that you can decide to pick up that season partway through and then start getting the progress on the season pass if you like. And the season pass used to be more attractive. Anyways, Paul Tassi continues by saying Destiny's problem right now is that it already feels labyrinthine to new or returning players due to a combination of things. Parts of the game are free to play. Parts of the game are paid expansions. Some of those expansions are eventually made free. Then there are seasons sold for $10 a piece that now flow into one another with story developments. On top of all of this, Bungie has implemented content vaulting, deleting the entire first 2 years of content of the game, which is the base game, the 2 DLCs, and now its first expansion, Forsaken. So if you strip this down to its base elements, Destiny is essentially operating like a subscription game at this point. And I have to say, I agree with that idea. This comes across as Bungie's eyes being bigger than its stomach. They have monetized the game in too many ways now and chopped it up into too many little pieces. I don't even know why they bother having portions of it free to play anymore, as that content keeps being removed first, and it's impossible to keep track of what New Light players can even do in the game at any given point in time. And for loyal players, the headline of now they're selling dungeons separately is enough to get many people to throw their hands up in frustration. And I agree with this because it is confusing. This is Destiny. You're talking about a quote unquote free to play game. You're talking about a game that should have some of this figured out by now. Like they have been in the game for a while. They've got a game that can potentially be phenomenal because the story is great and there are a lot of really good aspects. But when it comes to new seasons and how it's handled, it's a smorgasbord and it's frustrating. And we knew that when companies started implementing deluxe edition, deluxe super upgrade edition, ultimate edition, and then collector's edition, what all of those meant and what things you actually got for those things. Now, Destiny is quote unquote an MMO. And at this point, if you're going to try and model yourself as an MMO, then you should potentially look at what MMOs are actually doing. So I have some examples for you. I am not against content vaulting. I am confused as to why they would break this up the way that they've done it. If you're going to entice people to buy additional content, you need to give them a very good reason as to why they are paying for it, and it needs to be fair. And if you have to buy the game, all of the season passes, because you don't get the option to only buy one season pass right now. So I can't just poke my toe in and say, I am not sure how Witch Queen is going to go, so I am going to buy Witch Queen and the first season pass. That is a price I'm comfortable with paying. Forcing me to pay for a deluxe edition to get all 4 of the season passes in order to access 2 dungeons, I am not okay with. So, with that, thank you so much for being part of the Patreon. If there are things you would like to see me cover in the future, please let me know in Discord. And other than that, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.